Although Ballerina is a spin-off of the John Wick franchise, this movie proves she's just as deadly of a force and one to be reckoned with. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Josh and welcome to an episode of Wednesday Watchlist. In these videos, I talk about recent movies and shows that I've watched, as well as going over some upcoming movies and shows that I want to go see. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my non-spoiler review of the Ballerina movie, and then I'm going to be discussing 9 Perfect Strangers Season 2, and just giving some of my thoughts on this season. And then lastly, I'm going to wrap things up by talking about some upcoming movies and shows that I want to go see. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into my review of Ballerina. Again, no spoilers for those of you who have not seen it. So this movie is about a woman whose father was murdered by a group of assassins / mercenaries, and it shows her journey as she joins the Ruska Roma and eventually finds out the truth about her father and the group of assassins responsible for his death. So starting off with the cast. So firstly, we have Ana de Armas as Eve Macaro, who goes by the nickname of Ballerina. We have Keanu Reeves, who plays a quick cameo as John Wick. Lance Riddick as Sharon or Karen. I don't know how you actually pronounce that, so I apologize if I pronounced it wrong. Norman Reedus as Daniel Pine. Lorenza Izzo as Lena. Ian McShane as Winston. Sharon Buchanan Brewster as Nogi. Angelica Houston as the director of the Ruska Roma, Gabrielle Byrne as Chancellor, and Juliette Doherty as Tatiana. Now, you may have noticed that there are a lot of recurring characters from the original John Wick franchise in this movie, and again, that is because this is a spin-off of that franchise. So a lot of the characters that are in the John Wick movies are also in this movie as well. So this movie was directed by Len Wiseman, who is a writer on Underworld and actually was a producer on the Total Recall reboot. Now, moving on to my thoughts about this movie, let's start off with the good here. And my first thing that I think is really good about this movie is the action sequences. Even though this is a spin-off of the John Wick franchise, this movie does not let up on its fight scenes and its fight choreography. This movie does not let up on action. We go essentially from action scene to action scene. And again, I think that they're really well done. I really like the choreography here. And there was a behind the scenes clip that I saw on TikTok. If I can find it again, I'll post it in this video.
Alright, so here we go. Get it. And 3, 2, 1, go.
Even though this is a spin-off of the John Wick franchise, it still very much respects the very well done action sequences that are in the John Wick franchise. I would have to say that this movie executes the action sequences very well, and I really did like that aspect of this movie. Next up, this is in connection to my liking of the action sequences, is Ana de Armas. I really like her character in this movie, and I also really like her fight scenes. I really enjoyed seeing Ana de Armas in this movie. I think her character in this movie is pretty good. I really did like Ana de Armas's character in this movie. I like the energy she brought to this franchise. I thought it was kind of like a fresh spin on the John Wick character, where both characters kind of have a very traumatic past and history, and that essentially like fuels their fight. And I really like that element of this story. Again, it's very similar to John Wick's story, but I really like the twist here where she was essentially brought up in this. And then lastly, this also goes hand in hand with the last point I just made, and that is the story. I really like the story of this movie. I really like, again, the essentially twist on the John Wick franchise story, where it's very similar again to his story, but it's kind of like a little fresh take, or it's like a little twist, if you will. I really like that aspect. I think the story is very well executed, and I think the pacing of the story is very well done. And again, I really like the action sequences here, and I think the story is just very well written overall. And then now moving on to the bad / parts I did not like about this movie. First of which is going to be the timeline. So before making this video, I tried to like research when does this movie take place, and I found some conflicting answers, but from what I gathered, this movie is supposed to take place between John Wick Chapter 3 and John Wick Chapter 4. Certain things from this movie just don't make sense chronologically, given where this movie is supposed to fit in the John Wick franchise. And again, I'm not spoiling anything, but John Wick does indeed have a cameo in this movie that was shown in the trailer for this movie. But one thing that really confuses me is the timeline of this movie. I just don't really understand how this movie fits into everything, and his cameo and his appearance, given where this movie is supposed to fit chronologically in the John Wick franchise timeline, just certain bits just didn't make sense for me. So that was one of the things that I just didn't like about this movie. And then next up, we have the release schedule timing, or like the release date for this movie. This really doesn't have anything to do with the movie, like creatively or story-wise. This is just essentially like the studio's fault, if you will. But I think that the fact that this movie is now just coming out after the John Wick franchise has essentially been concluded, or like his main movies have essentially ended, I think that that might have been a mistake, because I feel like if this movie would have come out in between 3 and 4, where it chronologically is supposed to take place, it might have been more of a success, if you will. I believe this movie at the time of filming this has only made like $30 million domestically at the box office. And so I feel like if this movie would have come out where it is supposed to chronologically take place, it may have been more of a success. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I just feel like this movie is just a little too late, because I feel like most people that are interested in this movie have already seen all the John Wick movies, and so they're kind of like, well, I'll just wait for this to hit streaming, or they're just not interested in it simply because the John Wick main storyline has essentially been concluded. But overall, I did enjoy this movie. Again, I really like the action sequences here. I really like Ana de Armas' character. I also like, again, how a lot of the characters from the John Wick franchise make an appearance in this movie. I think it's a good movie. I think it's a really good action movie as well, and I think it does do a successful job at spinning off the John Wick franchise and giving us like a new character and like a new take on this world. Now, overall, as far as my ranking for this movie, I would say that I'm probably going to give this movie, a A- / a B+, and the only reason why I would give it that score is simply because of, again, the timeline. Once you start really asking questions like, how is it possible that John Wick makes a cameo in this movie, given where this movie is chronologically taking place, and like how certain aspects from the movie make sense. Again, I'm not going to spoil how it all ties together and how it tries to tie John Wick into this franchise, but like once you start asking those questions, certain elements of the story just kind of fall apart. And so that's the only reason why I would give this movie a B+. But other than that, I think I would definitely give this movie like an A-. Again, it's a really good movie. I think it's a really good action movie as well, and I really did enjoy this movie. Now, moving on to a show I'm currently watching. I am currently in the process of watching 9 Perfect Strangers season 2. Hulu is doing, I believe, weekly drops for this show. I'm all caught up. I just finished watching episode 4. I believe episode 5 will be out by the time this video comes out. As far as this season goes, I think this season is pretty interesting. I definitely feel like there is like a huge like tonal shift with this second season, however, compared to the first season. And I think that might be due to the fact that we know more about the Masha character and like her true motivations and what is really driving her to do the things that she's doing in this show. I think because we know more about her and her story, I think that's why it feels a little tonally different to me, at least. But by no means is the second season a bad season. I think the second season is pretty dang good. I really like the initial premise of this season, where it's like she is essentially going back to like where her mentor taught her all of these things, and she's essentially kind of like taking over, I believe, like her mentor's like resort spa thing, if I'm not mistaken. I really like that aspect of the show, and I think it's a pretty intriguing premise. And then we also see her kind of acting like a mentor in this season towards a new, I guess, kind of like student of hers, if you will, where she's kind of like showing someone else how to also do the same thing she's doing. I really think that's an interesting addition to the story, where it's kind of like Masha is going back to like where she learned, and now she's also like training someone else to do essentially the same thing that she's doing. I find that pretty interesting, and I really like that aspect of this story. Now, as far as characters that I am really interested in / intrigued by this season, number one is definitely going to be the kids show host. His name is Brian. He was a puppeteer on a kids show before something bad happened, and he was essentially like forced off the show. And I also really like the character of Agnes. She is a nun who is essentially going through like struggles with her faith and stuff like that. And so I'm really interested in those two characters in particular, just because their backstories are very interesting to me, and it's also really interesting what happens to them over the first couple episodes in this show, where they of course take some of the medicine that Masha recommends the group takes, and just some of the experiences that this medicine leads them on. So overall, I do really like this second season. I think it's a really good continuation of where we left off after the first season. I think it does a really nice job of tying them together and also, again, continuing the story. Now, as far as like what season I like more, right now it is definitely going to be season 1, simply because I feel like that season was just like a breath of fresh air. At least to the best of my knowledge, I can't think of a show that is similar to the first season of 9 Perfect Strangers, other than, I guess you could say, the OA is very similar to this show. I feel like both of these shows have similar vibes, where it's like a woman teaching a group of individuals how to experience, I guess you could say, like new realities or go on new journeys and experiences through life. So I guess in that sense, the OA and this show are pretty similar, I would say. But other than that, I can't, at least to like my memory right now, I can't recall any other shows that give me a similar vibe to this show. But overall, again, I really do like this show. And I think if you're looking, again, for a show that's similar to the OA in certain aspects, but you're also looking for, I would say, a good, I wouldn't say it's like juicy drama, but like a pretty dramatic show that ties into things around like natural medicine and like healing from like past traumas, I would say that this is definitely a good show to check out if you're looking for something akin to that. And now finally, moving on to upcoming movies and shows, I'm going to start off with things that I am still watching. So we just discussed 9 Perfect Strangers season 2, so I'm still, of course, watching that. And then I'm also still watching the show called Forever on Netflix. I started this, like, I believe last week. I'm still watching this show. I think it's a really fresh show, especially from Netflix. I really like the premise of the show and everything around that. And then I'm also still watching Hacks. This is a great comedy show on Max right now. I think this is one of the best comedy shows out there. And then I'm also still watching Lazarus, which is another Max show. This is an anime from the people behind Cowboy Bebop. So if you liked Cowboy Bebop, I definitely recommend you check out Lazarus. But then that is pretty much everything that I am currently watching. Now, moving on to movies that I want to check out. Number 1 is still Bring Her Back. I need to go see this in theaters. I have not had the chance to go see this in theaters, unfortunately, but I plan on going to see this movie. And then next up is Tyler Perry's new Netflix movie called Straw. This stars Taraji P. Henson. I don't know much about the premise, but I've seen some like hints about it online, so I definitely want to check this out and see what this film is about. And then we've also got The Phoenician Scheme. This is another recent theatrical release that I still need to check out. I've heard good things about this, so I definitely plan on checking this movie out. And then 2 new movies that are about to come out that I do want to check out in theaters is number 1, 28 Years Later. This movie is coming out on June 20th, and it is a follow-up to the 28 Something Later franchise. I believe the first one was 28 Days Later, and then it went 28 Weeks Later, if I'm not mistaken, and now we have 28 Years Later. So I don't know if it's the final film, but it is the next film in right now what is just a trilogy. So I'm looking forward to going to see the upcoming film in this franchise, especially because it's been so long since we've gotten one of these films. And then lastly, we've got a horror film called Together. This comes out June 30th, and from what I gather from the trailer, it is about a couple that essentially starts becoming conjoined, like physically conjoined. And so the premise looks really interesting to me, and so I really want to check out this movie. All right, and then lastly, moving on to shows. Number 1, we've got the new season of Ginny and Georgia, Ginny and Georgia season 3. I am not particularly the biggest fan of this show. I haven't been since season 1, but that's just me personally. By no means is this a bad show. And this is one of those shows where I'm just like, I don't like it, but I don't hate it. Like, it's neutral for me, so I definitely will be watching this. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they dropped the entire season, and I think the episodes are like 40 minutes to an hour long. And then next up, we've got Adults. So I actually secretly started watching this on Hulu. I saw this online, and people were saying how it was similar to Overcompensating, and how similar these 2 shows were to another FX show called The English Teacher, if I'm not mistaken, but it stars Brian Jordan Alvarez. And so I've heard and I've seen online that people say that Adults and Overcompensating are both very similar to that show, and I really like that show. So I actually snuck in a couple episodes of Adults over the past week, and I do really like this show so far. I think it's really funny, and I also think it's a good take on like what it's like to be a young person in today's society. So I really like this show. And then I've also got to check out Overcompensating, because I've also seen a couple trailers for that, and I think it's a really also interesting take on, again, what it's like to be a young person in society, specifically what it's like to be a college age person in in society. So these are two shows that I definitely plan on checking out. But then that is pretty much going to do it for this week's episode of Wednesday Watch List. I just want to give you a big thank you for watching this video, and as always, please don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye!